for the best part of the day, meditation. So please find a comfortable position. So whenever I say that, then everybody moves into their meditation pose, which is great. And I hope that mentally also, you're coming into that orientation that is most conducive to becoming still and at ease and happy. We can start with taking a few longer or deeper breaths. Bringing some attention to our posture, feeling the alignment of the spine, but also allowing the body to relax. Noticing if there is any tightness in the face, around the eyes or the jaw. And kindly and consciously inviting those muscles to relax. Noticing any tension in the shoulders, the arms or the hands, and inviting that area also to relax. Bringing attention to the belly and the low back. Letting go of any tightness there. And inviting your legs to relax. So breathing in and breathing out, aware of your breath. And aware of your whole body. And as the body relaxes, we might begin to feel some pleasant feelings arising. Maybe some warmth, tingling, the feelings that come when you're really letting go of the muscles and any tightness. And also tuning into more of a sort of spiritual level, calm, peaceful. Happy. When you notice some feeling of tingling or warmth somewhere in the body and put some attention on that, that feeling can spread. That kind of pleasant spiritual feeling can also show up as sound, like a soft humming sound in the background, beyond or behind all the physically created sounds. Or sometimes people see light in the mind. But it's all just vibration, tuning in to a spiritual level of peace and contentment. And if this feeling, any feelings of peace and calm are more subtle than that, that's fine too. Just noticing even the subtle happiness that comes from being mindful and present. Meditation is much more about opening and relaxing and observing what arises than it is about making something happen. When we try to achieve something in meditation, it stops us cold. Instead, suggest that the body is tranquil, suggest to the mind to become tranquil. And notice that we can give the mind guidance, but we can't make the experience happen. Instead, we open up, invite, and observe. And it can help a lot to have an attitude of kindness. Kindness and mindfulness. Ajahn Brahm has been calling it kindfulness. The Buddha statues at Ajahn Gana's monastery all smile. The big ones. So you can smile. Giving yourself the time, the space, the love and care to enjoy your meditation. Whatever happens, it's a gift. So staying with the breath, noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. Relaxing, feeling, and being aware, present, alert, until the sound of the bell. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. The Buddha was very clear of characteristics of human beings that we as human beings use as ways to discriminate against each other. And I'll say against because a lot of times it is ways of setting people aside or whatever, and that don't matter. And he said, there's all these things that don't matter. You know, your ethnicity, your race, your color, the way any body part looks or acts, even gender. You know, I was noticing the other day in particular how great it is to feel like I can trust the people in our community. I mean, any one of them I would feel comfortable with them coming to the vihara and, you know, having some responsibility to look after it or something like that. You know, I know they're not going to steal anything. I know that, you know, it's like you really we're all really trying to live according to the 5 precepts. And as one of our community members said the other day, what if everybody in the world lived by the 5 precepts? And it happens that she has a job in cybersecurity. And she's like, am I doing the right thing with my life to be descending hackers, or, you know, kind of things? And she's really, you know, thinking about, you know, what would that be like? And it's a thought I've had often myself. Think of all the things we wouldn't have to even think about. If you have this value, then first of all, you need to live it. And then you should also be encouraging others, speak in favor of it and encouraging others to live it. And when we're doing that, we really help each other. And we can also talk about the nuances of the situations we get into, which is really important to share with each other, because then we get ideas about how to deal with things. It happens in the monastic form a lot. Every 2 weeks, we have confession with each other on the standard. You know, what does that mean? You know, we take those kinds of guidelines of the Buddha and we use them, and then we notice where are the sticky points, and we talk about that with each other, or talk about that, you know, in community. We can really gain a lot of insight and sort of creative ways of really training the mind, purifying our conduct. It is really great to hear these things later. But we really session as an opportunity for people to really grapple with whatever they want to grapple with the people present, and I have to think about where it's going after that. On our Saturday morning sessions, which are more about, well, it's called, how do I apply the Dhamma to this? it started the pandemic, like, how do I apply the Dhamma to this? How am I going to learn how to be a more robust practitioner? This idea of how do you create safety to really express yourself? And sometimes that means smaller groups getting together. So we had this, the two of us went somewhere. So you can tell we're a small operation in many ways. I mean, there's two of us right now doing it. And we were going on retreat or something, maybe teaching a retreat somewhere else, and we put the regular programs in the hands of some of our advanced lay participants. And they had very clear guidelines that mostly they created around how they would run these sessions. And they would discuss a sutta. They were clear that they didn't want anyone in the group to kind of become the authority or the expert or take over the room. That people had to be respectful of each other when they're talking, and various things like that, and not sharing anything outside, that kind of thing. And then the Saturday morning program, people got so into it with each other and really appreciating the opportunity to talk to each other, and they would play a Dhamma talk. The guideline was it needed to be a monastic giving the talk, and that's just because that's what we offer at KBV. There are lots of opportunities for hearing lay teachers, and that's all fine. But given our mission and our approach, they were playing monastic talks. And then they were discussing it together, and they bonded so much that this group up. And they said, yeah, well, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And they said, so they called it Just the Mice. So just the mice get together. And they really have had a strong Kalyana Mita bond getting formed that way. And these are the kinds of things that I think really help a community to develop. Or, it's just organic. Like I said, we don't know how to make a community, but we do see that the Buddha's teachings as the basis really creates a strong foundation. And then it has a chance to organically kind of form in the ways that feel natural and supportive of people. And of course, there are community work days. We've got a ton of work. We can put people we can keep people busy for a long time with that 14.5 acres of forest. It's really great. And it's great to be able to get together and do things together. I wanted to share a few principles that come from the Buddha about community harmony and involvement. And it's from a sutta in the Middle Length Discourses, number 48. The context is that there's a group of monks that are quarreling, and the Buddha is asked if he would come and talk with them. There isn't any community that just goes along harmoniously. We all run into conflict. Even two of you, right, think the same way. I needed to walk away and work with my own mind. Even in the suttas, the Buddha says with an arahant, something arises, a strong feeling. I don't know, what would that be? Irritation, anger, disgust, whatever. And he says it's like a hot coal getting, shooting out of the fire, and it lands on the bare ground and goes out just like that. So the feeling comes, but the arahant's not identifying with it at all. And it just goes out. Or another simile he uses is it's like a drop of water on the lotus leaf and it just rolls off. So this when we can catch our own stressful feelings, and we can walk up and really work with those, not just shove it under so that it comes out later in some funny way, but to really be with that and go, okay, it's all right. Let's take a look at what's going on here. A lot of times we know what's going on. We know our own conditioning. We've practiced with it 100 times, and so we just can let it go out. So these things happen in community. But to have thoughts of loving kindness towards people, even as that irritation or anger or whatever else gets sparked, this is you can really count that as a blessing and as an advancement in your practice. You keep those 5 precepts as a standard. And it's important to not let any thoughts that that's not possible for you to be entertained. Those thoughts, set them aside. The Buddha knew we could do this. He said, if you couldn't do it, I wouldn't be teaching you to do it. You can do it. And so to hold that view, this is where we're going. Letting go of all attachments to all impermanent, non-self, suffering things, which is everything in this realm, and recognizing the real beauty and freedom of that. So when we hold that kind of view, the Buddha said that's like the ridgepole of the building. That's what holds it all together. That's what it keeps encouraging us to do all the other things. Because we see the value in the results. We see how we can care about each other, how we can care for ourselves, how we can make progress on the path, how we can manage dealing with those times when we slip off.
I'm curious of how you would, if you would have any guidance, and I guess I'm curious from both a lay perspective and a monastic perspective, because I'm also curious if one were to ordain, what can you do for family? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Of course, this is something many of us encounter because we tend to have parents and they tend to get old. And we tend to have long-standing sensitivities, and it's really challenging. And the whole idea of how to look after them as a layperson and as a monastic is a really good thing to look into, helpful. So just to kind of give you an idea, my mother started to go to Thailand with me. I would go once a year to visit my son in the monastery, and she would come along. And she said that Buddhism was what she was looking for all her life. And I was already a nun, and my mom came out to California because she wanted to, well, I invited her actually to come for a month at the time of her birthday, and then she never went back to Indiana. She just stayed. She lived out of the suitcase she brought for a year. And I'm like, Mom, don't you want to go back and get some of your stuff? And she's like, no. So this is during a time when I'm a samaneri, and then I become a bhikkhuni. And you can take care of your parents after you ordain, and you can take care of your parents. Of course, everybody's got different situations and different relationships, so don't take any of this as absolute. And if this feels uncomfortable and you'd like to talk about a particular situation where what I'm about to say doesn't fit, then contact me. But it's challenging to be there in the front row seat as your parents age and to know how to take care of them and to know how to take care of ourselves, because we have to take care of ourselves too. And one of the things that was really interesting, particularly as a practitioner, was to work with my own patterns of irritation and resentment for a lot of things that happened in the past. And, I didn't want to be harsh or sharp or irritated with this sweet old lady. One thing that I found really useful, both with my mother and with my children. So you already know I had a son who's a monk who really laid the way for me to become a monastic. I also have a daughter, and she is wonderful. And they're, raising children is challenging. Having family is challenging. And these are some of the best situations for our practice to understand what we're clinging to, what we want to have be different than it is, and how our patterns work. Because these people know us so well, and we know them so well. All it takes is a look. All it takes is one word, and the feelings shoot up there, right? And to really be able to catch those with mindfulness and be able to calm those down and to be able to start to form boundaries that are healthy, where you can support those you love and still take care of yourself, is a real challenge. It's a process. It's helpful to get advice sometimes about what other people think about the way you're handling things, because someone else's more, objective point of view might be useful. But one of the things I found was that it helped a lot to reflect on whatever happened in a situation so that I could decide whether or not I would like to handle the same thing differently the next time. And one of the things that I found that's beneficial, at least in the relationships I have, and you might find the same thing, is that the same situation repeats again and again and again. The same feeling arises, and their reaction is the same. And there's these patterns, right? These habits, or that's not even a habit. It's more like a well-traveled kind of sequence of events or something, right? And then to start anticipating it. Okay, when I have to do this, then she's going to react like that, and then I'm going to feel like this, and I'm going to want to say that, and I'm gonna preparing myself for it would really help. It's like, okay, that's going to happen. She's going to say this kind of thing, and this is how I'm going to feel, and then just be present with that feeling and let it go. Because there's already been a ton of processing about where that all came from and all that, and then sometimes you're just left with dealing with the feeling. So you're back to the spark going out and the drop of water rolling off the leaf, and how to make that happen, how to condition ourselves. And it's very important not to beat yourself up about any of it. Just really keep trying. It's very important not to expect them to change. I tried for a long time to get my mother to change. I bet you know how that worked out. It's kind of really out of my realm, and I didn't know it. But once we realize, kind of what is my space, and there are some places where the Buddha talks about staying in your own domain, your own Gotara. Yeah, it's like your own field, your own domain, your own pasture, and not going over into someone else's. At least that's one of the ways I think of it. If I'm trying to affect someone else's behavior, I'm trying to get them to change, I'm really reaching over the wall. And it doesn't really work. What I can do is talk about how it feels when they do things. A lot of these kind of communication models that are really useful, whether it's nonviolent communication or parent effectiveness training or whatever we use, to recognize that I can work on my side of the street. It can help adjust, or it'll affect what's going on at for the other person's part, but I have no control over where that goes. And sometimes when we change our side in a beneficial way, the other side gets worse first, because you're not acting the way you're supposed to. You've varied from the script, and it's very upsetting, even if what you're doing now is better. And then you have to wait that out with confidence that you're not engaging in the same way and what you're doing is more healthy, and then it will probably get better after that. But be prepared for people to not react the way you'd like, and it's okay. And I know a lot of monastics who take care of their aging parents. And of course, you have to be in the right kind of situation. If you're in a monastery where someone else is making that decision, it may not go the way you want it to, but it's probably possible to find a situation within which you can respond when it feels important to be able to respond. And yes, ordain. You do not need that hair, as lovely as it is.
Hello again, Venerables. I'm Ayyā. I wanted to ask if you might be willing to say a little more about the ultimate or ongoing vision for KBV, so that us other two-folds out here might be able to, or umpteenth folds, might be able to better support that.
So we've always had the idea that it would be great to have a group of 5 bhikkhunis. And as you can tell, we're growing that very slowly, because we realized that within the Bhikkhuni Sangha, there's a lot of variation about how people practice and what they want to do. And it's really helpful if you're on the same page in a small group, instead of going in, 5 people going in 8 directions. So as I said before, we are very focused on the early Buddhist texts. And I mean early, like we don't spend any time at all on the Abhidhamma. My teachers have said, don't waste your time. And I started kind of late. I don't have a lot of time. I got to stick to the really core stuff. So here we are. And we don't also do much with commentarial material. We try to really stick to the early texts. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. They'd like to, talk about Eckhart Tolle and whatever else, and that's okay, but it just doesn't happen where we are. So there's that. And then we actually have 3 kind of fundamental criteria for our monastic community. That's the first one, be on the same page with that. The second one is that whoever is there in the monastic community, now there's 2 of us, when there's 3 or 4, the next person coming in really has to connect with and get along well with the ones that are already there. And that means impartiality. So that was something that came up this morning. Most of you didn't hear about it, but the Buddha talked about treating people with impartiality as a way of building a really good sustainable relationship. And if people come in who are like only focused on the senior person, especially in a woman's community, it does not work. And I'll come back to this idea in a minute of, I think women's communities need different things than men's communities do. So that's the second thing. Got to get along with everyone, really have respect for each other, really want to live together. And the third one is you have to be willing and able to change. So what does that mean? You know, I actually think this is an important criterion if you're looking for a partner, and the way we communicate and all of this, and be willing to really try to see it from different angles. And then we get along better. The two of us have gone through a lot of work together. So those are our three criteria that we make clear. And so saying that, it's like part of the vision to have a slightly larger bhikkhuni community. 5 is kind of the magic number, because if you have 4, you can do all the sangha kama, you can, chant the patimokkha together, and then it's helpful to have the broader community base of nuns to work through things with. So, yeah, helping people, providing public programs, providing an opportunity for lay people to be able to stay on the property for some period of time, both helping and participating in the schedule, that kind of thing. Everything's by appointment. We don't have open hours as if people can just drop by, but as Venerable Kovilo mentioned earlier today, we actually are quite open with our hours for receiving communications and responding to people. We really do want to support sincere practitioners, and we are filled with mudita when people are sincere in the practice.
Could you say more in terms of reading the suttas? It's been really central in my own practice, and I finished the Samyutta Nikaya twice. I'm almost finished the Majjhima Nikaya second time, and I've read off all the Nikayas, and it's kind of like a transmission. Is how I feel. Like the Buddha's just right there. It's amazing. And I've tried the Visuddhimagga, and it's just I'm just not interested. I know. With all due respect to Buddhagasa. But how? I guess my question is, sometimes I feel, and I know people who are like very systematized about how they do it. They take notes and all kind of stuff. And I just sort of do this sitting and reading and sitting in a big long chunk in the morning, I don't know, from 5 to about 8:30. That's what I do. And I don't feel like getting much more organized other than I highlight stuff. I do it in Kindle, so I can highlight stuff and I remember things and I can search for keywords, but to actually sit down and take notes on all kinds of things, because it's just the transmission. But maybe I'm missing some, so I wonder if you had any advice. That's my question.
Well, my first comment is, yes! That is so awesome. It fills me with mudita. This is great, yes, do that. Do it in the way that inspires you. Don't feel like you have to turn it into an academic study. Absorb it in your pores. That's what you're doing, it sounds like. Read all 4 Nikayas, read the Therigatha, the Dhammapada, the Udana, the Itiwataka, the whatever, and then when you finish, start again, kind of like you are doing. And, on your second pass and your third pass or whatever pass, you're going to see different things. You're in a different place. And if you feel like taking some notes, maybe making some categories, particularly if there's some things that show up on a particular topic that you might want to teach about, you could do that. Just keep it light. Yeah. Keep it keep it at a level that actually keeps that inspiration going. And it is like a transmission. And it's also like fitting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together. And you start to see that there are no gaps. There's a sutta where the Buddha says there's nothing that you could add to this teaching to make it more complete. And there's nothing that you could take away to make it better. Of course, there are the suttas that got snuck in there later. Ajahn Brahmali said it was easier for people to add something than it would be to take it away. Now you can kind of imagine that, right? You don't want to take you're transmitting this sacred text and you don't want to leave anything out. But boy, it sure seems like this should fit in there. And there's one sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya that isn't even Buddhist. It's a Brahminical idea of having to experience all of your karma. They've got the Buddha saying, I'm not saying that you can get enlightened without having experienced all your karma. And I read that and I read it again and I went, what the heck? And then I heard Ajahn Brahmali in a talk go, they've even snuck in a Brahminical sutta in there. It's totally opposite of so you do have to watch out for that. Follow the Buddha's own instructions about comparing these things to the bulk. And by reading so much of it, you get really the sense of what he was saying, and you can see it. When there's a tone of hatred somewhere, especially towards women, that's about the only place I see it. Wow, somebody with some serious, unexamined killer bit, because the Buddha just didn't have that anger or ridicule.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll just say it seems to me like unbelievably coherent. I mean, it's stunning when you consider how it was transmitted. So it just collapsed 2,500 years. It's still with me. It feels collapsed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, we've got time for one more question. The two of you have to duke it out over there. Sorry. Hi. 2 questions. Okay, I saw 2 hands. We're going to get both of them.
Would you say something about renunciation of things like status, or what your house looks like, or remaining really physically active if you get old?
It really takes setting things aside ourselves or having them fall apart. I mentioned fire. I know a couple who lived in the hills in Berkeley when the fire went through there. They were out to the beach that day, and when they came back, their house had burnt to the ground. Yeah, wow. In retrospect, I'm sure this wasn't the first feeling that came to them, but in retrospect, they were glad. It was freeing. He was a professor at Berkeley. He said that was when he started writing. It was so freeing